The second hour of the Peter Schiff Show. Tom Woods filling in for Peter today. And by popular demand, we are going to talk Bitcoin in this second hour. And this is a topic that, up till recently I wasn't interested in looking into because it just seemed too complicated, and I'm a busy guy, and people were asking me, at my libertyclassroom.com, am I going to accept Bitcoins? I thought, well, this would just be a lot of work. Like, why would I want to do that? Am I going to sell my books for Bitcoins? Like, I don't even understand the question. But a couple of weeks ago, I was in New Hampshire for the New Hampshire Liberty Forum put on by the Free State Project, and I talked to these people, these Bitcoin people, and I have to say I'm intrigued, especially because of the way they pitched it as, if you think the Free State Project is great, which I do, then Bitcoin is like 8 gazillion Free State projects in terms of its potential impact. So we've invited Erik Voorhees to join us today, who works for BitInstant, based in New York City. We're not going to get into what BitInstant does until later, because you have to understand Bitcoin first before you can understand BitInstant. But I want Erik to basically make the layman's case here for Bitcoin, explain it to us, and then we'll talk about some of the benefits. But before I bring Erik on, I just want to remind you guys, at the beginning of the show, I told a little story about what I heard at this weekend event, where somebody was telling me about a conference where up on stage he called a guy from China and had him transfer a substantial amount of money in Bitcoin to him on the stage out of China, which he did, which you're absolutely not allowed to do, and yet it was done right there in front of everybody, and there was nothing the Chinese government could do about it. So that got me interested. So Erik Voorhees, welcome to the Peter Schiff Show.
Hi, how you doing, Tom?
Doing well. All right. What I'd like you to do is just start off by, I believe in the old marketing adage that you should lead with the benefits and follow with the proof. So let's start by what's great about Bitcoin, and then secondly, we'll get into what the heck is it. So make the pitch for why libertarians in particular should care.
Okay, well, probably everyone in the world should care about Bitcoin, but libertarians especially. And the reason is that for the first time ever in the history of man, people now have a way to hold and transfer value without any other person being involved or having control over it. So this is the first time that you can possess wealth in a form that you can store and send somewhere else without anyone else having to give you permission for it. And if you look at something like gold, you can certainly store gold without anyone's permission. But it's very difficult to send it without someone else being involved. For example, if you want to send it across the world, you're going to need to use a shipping company, and you're going to need to trust them. And if you're going across borders and you have any significant amount of gold, you're going to have to claim it and then make sure the governments allow that in, that kind of thing. Bitcoin allows you to send money without any permission from anybody, and that's the really amazing thing about it.
Okay, but how does this pose a challenge to governments? I mean, why would they care? Oh, great, people can transfer money. So how does that hurt them?
Well, it hurts them because you're not just transferring dollars. It's actually its own currency. So to the extent that people start using it instead of government fiat, it is displacing the government fiat. Hypothetically, if a bunch of people started using Bitcoin for their transactions, and it doesn't even have to be for all transactions, just for a portion of them, that necessarily is robbing the government of their power over money because they cannot control Bitcoin and they cannot print it.
Is there a possibility, before we get into the nuts and bolts of what Bitcoin is? Well, in fact, maybe we have to do that before I can ask you what would happen if they tried to ban it or something like that. Try to explain to us what exactly is it? Is it a physical thing? Just so that everybody understands this, what exactly so Bitcoin is both the currency itself and the payment system. We use the same term to refer to the whole thing. But what is it, when we're talking about the money aspect of it, what exactly is it?
So Bitcoins actually are just accounting entries in a distributed database called the blockchain. And the blockchain is simply a ledger of all Bitcoin transactions that have taken place, and it's distributed among all Bitcoin users around the world. So when you send 5 Bitcoins to someone else, this global ledger records that your Bitcoin account number sent 5 Bitcoins to another Bitcoin account number. Your account number is thus debited for that, and the person who receives it is credited with that. So the Bitcoins are not physical. They do not exist anywhere. They are simply ledger entries.
Okay, so is there a possibility that you could now Bitcoin has been doing very well in the past couple of weeks in terms of its value. So is there a chance though that this could become so big? I mean, it's starting to really break out of its initially it was viewed as some kind of an oddball thing, but now more and more people are interested in it. Could it get to a point where governments would say, well, this really is a threat to us. We do need to have power over the money supply. That's part of our lifeblood, and we can't have people transacting in secret in this thing that, of its very nature, we can't possibly tap into or observe, so we're going to have to just crack down on the whole thing. Could the government do that? Are there ways that governments could do that?
Yeah, I mean, they can certainly try it, right? They can use their pen and make anything illegal that they want. The question is whether it would be effective. But first, I think it's important to understand that governments do not yet understand the real threat that is Bitcoin. They know about it, and they see it as a problem for money laundering. They see it as a problem for maybe buying drugs, but they do not understand the real threat, which is that it threatens the power that they wield through manipulation and issuance of their currency. And I'm not sure how long it will take them to realize that that's the real threat of Bitcoin, because most of them don't understand economics enough to even understand that monies should and can compete with each other. But hypothetically, a few years down the road, if they see that Bitcoin as a money is starting to compete with their money, then, they probably will try to ban it or regulate it in some way. And this is where things get really interesting, because Bitcoin is not a company or an organization. It's a distributed technology. And so in order to freeze accounts or shut down the Bitcoin system, the government would really have to turn off the entire internet, because there's no server that they can go after to turn it off. There's no business that they can raid. And, I think a lot of your listeners may be aware of eGold, which was a gold instrument several years ago, electronic way to send shares of gold around. And that was very cool, because you could escape government inflation with a money that can be transferred electronically. The problem is that as soon as it gets big enough, the government can go into the eGold office and take everything and seize the gold and shut it down. And that's exactly what happened. Bitcoin is superior to that because there is no office. So if they try to shut it down, there's no one they can go after.
But you have a website and a company called BitInstant. Can you we're going to take a break in just a minute, but can you give me a summary of what does BitInstant do, and why couldn't they just go and shut down BitInstant?
Yeah, so BitInstant helps people buy Bitcoins easily. So you can use cash, and mostly in the U.S. right now, you can use cash and buy Bitcoins within an hour or so, instead of wiring money to an exchange, which takes a few days. But absolutely, the government could shut down a company like BitInstant. The key is that BitInstant is not Bitcoin. And if BitInstant was shut down, it would be an inconvenience, but it does not fundamentally harm the system. And there are many companies like BitInstant and many Bitcoin companies growing up, not just in the U.S., but all over the world. So even if they started taking down those companies, it's a losing battle. There's no way that they can stop everyone from using it.
All right, I've got some more questions about Bitcoin coming up next, but in the meantime, if people want to get started on this, they want like Bitcoins 101, what website do you refer them to?
Probably the best place for new people to go is a site called weusecoins.org. It's WEUSECOINS.org, We Use Coins. And that's a good place to start, but I think it's important for people to realize that it is a little complicated, and it is so powerful that they should really take some time to learn about it, because it's in an afternoon you can understand it, but don't expect to grasp it in 15 minutes. Right.
And of course also, if you were to ask anybody on the street, not one person in 1,000 could explain to you how the internet works, and yet we all use it and we all love it. So the fact that it can be tricky to, there's the entry into it can be a little tricky, doesn't invalidate it by any means. All right. We're going to continue our conversation with Erik Voorhees when we come back from this break on the Peter Schiff Show. More on Bitcoin, and I'm going to be throwing a few more objections, and then we'll just see how the thing works and what the benefits are. That's next on the Peter Schiff Show, the gold standard in talk radio. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Peter Schiff Show. Tom Woods in for Peter, joined by Erik Voorhees, who is talking Bitcoin with us. He's from BitInstant.com and recommends the site weusecoins.org if you want to try and get a handle on Bitcoin for yourself. But I'm telling you, when I was up with the Free State Project a couple of weeks ago, I mean, you were viewed as some kind of an oddball if you weren't hooked into Bitcoin. If you weren't accepting Bitcoins as payment, there was kind of, people weren't hostile, but they were wondering, what are you, living in 1977? Come on. So let's go back. And Erik, I realize that right now, we're playing devil's advocate here, and we do want to take some time to just lay out more about how Bitcoin works and so on. But these are the kinds of objections that you're going to get. And so, for example, why would Bitcoin be preferable to another kind of digital currency that actually has a gold backing, where I could perhaps engage in the same types of transactions, but I'd have some kind of precious metal backing? Why is Bitcoin superior to that?
Okay, so yes, very good question. And first of all, I'm a huge supporter of gold in general. I came to love Bitcoin because I understood why gold itself was a good money. And when I saw similar characteristics in Bitcoin, that's what got me intrigued initially. But there's a very simple reason why an electronic currency like Bitcoin is superior to one that is backed by gold. Because backing is actually a counterparty risk. Backing is a liability of whoever is doing the backing. So gold or e-gold is the perfect example of this. That was a gold-backed digital currency. And yes, it's true that it was easier to trust because it was gold. But the day that it was raided, all that trust was wiped out because the people who held e-gold had a counterparty risk in the e-gold company. So yes, they could get gold for their digital currency, but there was a risk that that company can run into problems, and indeed they do. And that's why a digital currency based on gold can never scale up very big, because as soon as the government gets angry, it's over.
Suppose government wasn't a problem. Suppose we lived in a government-free world. Suppose Bitcoin brings about a government-free world. Would not then a gold-backed digital currency be superior?
That would be a wonderful world.
Right, it might be 3,000 years from now. In the meantime, use Bitcoins, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I guess we'd have to let the market choose in that case. Bitcoin provides a number of things that are very useful in a world where governments exist. And if they didn't exist, who knows what the market would choose at that point.
Right.
But, yeah.
All right. Now what about, obviously, one objection is, what if indeed some cataclysm shut down the whole internet and my whole life savings are in Bitcoins and I can't even get online? I mean, I realize these are highly unlikely scenarios, but nevertheless.
No, these are all extremely good points. Yeah, I think first it's important for people to realize that just because the internet goes down doesn't mean your wealth is wiped out. Essentially, if the entire internet shut down tomorrow, the Bitcoin system would simply be frozen until the internet came back. Your money is still there, all your credits are accounted for. You just wouldn't be able to use it. But this is true of anything online. You wouldn't be able to use your online banking. And indeed, you wouldn't be able to use your credit cards at the gas station because everything relies on the internet today. So the fact that Bitcoin relies on the internet shouldn't be seen as a weakness so much as a strength. It is the internet and the diversity of the internet that really makes Bitcoin powerful. It's not a U.S. phenomenon. It's all over the world. And that's really where this thing excels.
Now, there's a built-in aspect of Bitcoin that provides sort of protection against debasement of Bitcoins. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so Bitcoins are released roughly every 10 minutes. The new Bitcoins are created. And this pattern of creation falls over time, so that the number of new coins is limited and predictable. And eventually, all of the Bitcoins will have been created. And that maximum number of Bitcoins is 21 million. So there will never be more than that. And people bring up the objection, well, in a world that used Bitcoin, 21 million units is not enough. And of course, Bitcoin solves that problem because each unit is divisible into 100 million pieces. So if a Bitcoin were worth $10 million, you could still buy your cup of coffee with it.
Okay, so I guess it's hard for me to understand when you say that, all right, so there's this upper bound, this upper limit on how many Bitcoins will be created, and that they are being created, at X, after X number of minutes, and then the rate of their creation is slowing down. But for there to be no I know Ben Bernanke is doing something here in the U, but who's creating? I mean, it can't entirely be a disembodied system, can it? I mean, who is behind it? Like, who's doing the creating? This is like a man on the street question.
Yeah, this is the genius of the invention. It replicates gold in that the amount of the money, the amount of gold or the amount of Bitcoin in this case, is predetermined. There is a set amount of gold in the Earth's crust, and there's a set amount of Bitcoin in we'll call it the digital crust. And just as in gold, there are people extracting Bitcoins from their potential into their real form over time, and it gets harder and harder to do, just like with gold. And also, like gold, it's roughly predictable, how many new coins are created each day. And actually, it's perfectly predictable because it's every 10 minutes, exactly how many new coins are coming out. But the person who is controlling this system is not a person at all. It is simply the software. It has been programmed to operate in this way. And because it is distributed on all these computers, hundreds of thousands of computers around the world, the code cannot be changed, because if you try to change your code, it will be rejected by the rest of the network. So the whole thing is sort of this spontaneous, self-regulating, almost an artificial intelligence. And I understand that probably sounds scary for people to put their money into. But because it is all open source software, anyone who knows how to program can actually read every line of code and can understand exactly how the thing works. And if you take the time to do that, you will come to realize that, yes, this thing does self-govern, and to some great degree, it can be trusted.
Erik, believe it or not, we're out of time, but I'd like to keep you on. We've got calls. People want to talk to you. Can you stick around a little longer?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. All right, so everybody, we're going to continue our conversation with Erik Voorhees after this break, and we've got almost a full board, but room for you at 855-4-SCHIFF, 855-472-4433. Let's talk Bitcoin here on The Peter Schiff Show. Stick around. Schiff Show, Tom Woods filling in for Peter today, having an interesting conversation about Bitcoins with Erik Voorhees of BitInstant.com. All right, Erik, let's go to the phones now, and let's first talk to. We have a couple of Scotts actually, so we're gonna the Scott we're going to start with is the one in Houston, Texas. Scott, welcome to the Peter Schiff Show.
Thank you for taking my call.
Sure. What's your question?
My question is, I've been very interested in getting into Bitcoins and generating Bitcoins, and then I went to the webpage, weusecoins.com.
I think it's .org. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, well, on the top right of it, it says there's a tweet, little feed. The FBI is now profiling Bitcoin users, stereotyping them as criminals. Could you care to comment on that?
Erik?
Yeah, I've actually seen that tweet. I think I saw it several weeks ago. I'm not sure what it's about exactly because I clicked on it, but the FBI released a report on Bitcoin almost a year ago, maybe last April, and it basically analyzed Bitcoin from a crime enforcement perspective. And I thought the report was actually quite fair. It did not make it sound like they hated the system and wanted to destroy it. They were just analyzing, that it could be used for nefarious purposes, just like cash or any other form of money. But it would be very silly for the FBI to start, going after individual Bitcoin users, because that's just going to, bring lots of attention to the system, and lots more people are going to start hearing about it, and they wouldn't have any effect on the actual usage.
Okay, Scott, thanks for that question. Let's go now to, we've got Andrew up in Canada, in Saskatoon. Welcome to the Peter Schiff Show.
Hi, Tom. I love your show when you host, and hi, Erik. So I was a little bit confused. when you started out by saying that Bitcoin is a system where only the two parties are involved. But also, it's a distributed database where everyone gets access to all the account numbers, if I understand correctly. So couldn't the governments theoretically go after the account holders and intimidate them? Am I missing something?
Well, the government could go after, the government could figure out that Bob was using Bitcoin if he made that public about himself. And they could seize his computer and perhaps see his Bitcoin software and all the transactions he had made. But all that they're going to learn from doing that is they're going to see Bitcoins being transferred from one account number to another account number. And there's no identity attached to any of these numbers. So they would be able to learn that Bob received Bitcoins and sent Bitcoins, but they would not know who they were received from or where they were sent to. And furthermore, if Bob had any modicum of skill, he would have many different Bitcoin accounts in different ways, many not even on his computer, but maybe hosted in the cloud. And so even a raid and a seizure would not reveal all the Bitcoin activity of this single guy, and it would reveal no activity of other people.
All right, thank you.
Does that answer the question?
Yeah, are you satisfied?
Yeah, I didn't realize that the account numbers were anonymous, or that makes sense.
Yeah, that's it. Okay, thanks, Andrew. Let's move on now to Paula in Marine City, Michigan. Welcome to the Peter Schiff Show.
Hi, Eric, and hi, Tom. In the first segment, Eric, you confirmed that Bitcoin really doesn't exist as a physical currency. It's like an entry in a ledger, which sounds kind of a lot like the fiat money we have now. So how is it different from fiat? And also, if Bitcoins are automatically created every so often, how does that not make the existing Bitcoins worth less?
Okay, so the first question, sorry, wait, can you say the first one again?
If Bitcoins are not a physical commodity, if it's just an entry in a ledger, that really sounds like...
How are they different? Yeah. How are they different than dollars? So, yeah, Bitcoins are a digital currency, and what most people don't realize is that dollars are also a digital currency. The fact that you have some cash in your wallet, those are just physical tokens representing the digital money known as dollars. Both of them are digital, and, the vast majority of U.S. dollars are not in physical form whatsoever. The difference between them, of course, is that one is limited in supply and the other is not. So Ben Bernanke can create as much of his digital currency as he wants, and we're seeing how fast he's doing that. But Bitcoin cannot do that. There's no person who can create more Bitcoins. The amount of Bitcoins that are being created are preset, pre-known to all parties involved, and the rate of that inflation falls over time. So everyone understands what it is, and people know that no single party gets to manipulate it to their own advantage. And your second question was, doesn't that creation of new coins debase the amount of Bitcoins that are already in existence? And of course the answer is yes. There are new Bitcoins being created, and that necessarily reduces the value of the other coins. But the point is that everyone knows how many coins are being created. That rate is controlled and falls over time. So we can call it damage of that debasement is very manageable. And of course, you have to have some way to get currency out into existence in the first place. You can't just create it all at once and then give it to one party. So Bitcoin is distributed to the people who are contributing their computers to the network. They're the ones who are getting the new coins.
Okay, let's move over now to Jack in Manhattan Beach, California. Jack, you're on the Peter Schiff Show. Let's move over now to Jack.
Oh, what about all the other digital currencies? Because I've seen, I went on the internet and I've seen so many different digital currencies that go under names other than Bitcoin.
Eric?
Yeah, well, most of those so-called digital currencies are actually just proxies for the dollar. Some people claim that PayPal dollars are a digital currency, but no, they're just a way to send dollars. Other digital currencies may be in like a video game or something. The point is that all of those other digital currencies are controlled and managed by a central party, usually a company, or in the case of the digital currency known as the dollar, it's the Federal Reserve. Bitcoin is the only currency that is not controlled or managed by some central party, and that makes it fundamentally different from absolutely everything else. And so it's not really fair to put it in the same category as other digital currencies when that fundamental difference exists.
All right, let's go to, I've got a couple more I want to get to, one way or the other, even if I have to keep you on a little longer, whether it's against your will or not, you're staying. All right, let's talk, because this is a very practical question. Sean in Lafayette, Louisiana, welcome to the Peter Schiff Show.
Yeah, thank you very much. I understand that you can put money into the Bitcoin system, and it's there, but what if you want to take it out? Can you withdraw that into your U.S. account?
Yeah, so think of Bitcoin just as you think of gold coins. If you want some gold coins, you go find someone who has them, and you trade your dollars with that person, and you get the gold coins and they get the dollars. If you have a bunch of gold coins and you want dollars back, you again go find someone who's willing to make a trade with you. The same thing is true with Bitcoin. It is a digital commodity that you trade with people. So if you have a bunch of Bitcoins and you want a bunch of dollars, you just find someone who is willing to exchange those with you at a rate that you both agree on, and then you trade it. It's freely tradable with anyone, anywhere, for any purpose whatsoever. And to make this trading easy, there are Bitcoin exchanges all around the world in many different currencies. And so that's where most of the trading goes on. But you can just as easily meet someone at a cafeteria near you and do a trade totally privately like that.
Okay, thank you, Sean. Let's go now to Scott in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Welcome to the Peter Schiff Show.
Good morning. You had mentioned that you were only going to produce 21 million Bitcoins totally, but in fact you said as you create them it debases the other ones, but actually wouldn't it actually inflate the other ones? Because it's like if I get in early, is it kind of like seems to me like a pyramid. If I buy a certain number of Bitcoins, I don't know if the value fluctuates. I've heard that it kind of does. But if I buy some early and then finally 21 million are out there and they're worth $1 million, I mean, in value, say, however, if there's some type of market on it, haven't I kind of actually, use this as an investment almost? And I guess maybe I don't understand that portion of it, but.
Well, yeah, I mean, any time that you buy something that is scarce and other people start wanting it also, the price is going to be bid up. This is true for gold. This is true for shares of corporate stock. It's true for apples or cars or anything. If you buy something and then other people want it, you're going to profit from that. So the people who have figured out Bitcoin, in the past years and started acquiring it, with the risk that entails, because there's no guarantee that other people will want it, those people have seen huge appreciation in the value of the Bitcoins that they own. And so, yeah, some people do use it as an investment. It's probably more appropriate to think of it as a highly speculative financial vehicle right now, because the value can go up and down very wildly because it's very small and new and uncertain. But yeah, absolutely, the quantity is scarce. So people know that if it's used, it's going to retain or appreciate in its value.
All right, thank you, Scott. Erik, we're just about out of time, so suppose somebody has been listening to this and is sort of, his curiosity is piqued. What are the next steps? I mean, we use coins.org, certainly, but suppose I want to get into Bitcoin, so what do I do?
For the audience on this show, I would recommend a document that I wrote last year called Bitcoin, the Libertarian Introduction. And if you Google that, you should be able to find it, written by me, Erik Voorhees. And that basically describes the whole system and why it's important, and it does not do so from a technical perspective. I'm not a programmer or developer. And if you read that document and you get excited by it, it has a bunch of links that you can continue to research. But again, it's just a process of learning. Whenever you discover some amazing new thing, just go research it. There's a wealth of information out on the internet about it, and you will be very. It's sort of like a rabbit hole. Once you jump in, some of us are still stuck down here and very excited about it.
Well, it's funny, Erik. When you and I had that lunch a couple of weeks ago with a couple other Bitcoin people, that was sort of the impression that I got, that each one of you guys had had looked into this, and then suddenly some kind of light bulb went on, and you just kept looking into it and kept looking into it, and went without sleep for a few days until you realized, oh my gosh, this thing is unbelievable. So that was interesting that so many people had the same experience. Well, you've been very generous with your time, coming and answering questions from me and from so many callers, and I'm very grateful to you. So thanks so much for taking that time with us.
No problem. Thank you, Tom.
All right, that's Erik Voorhees, everybody. That's Voorhees. BitInstant.com is where he's coming to you from. And check out weusecoins.org. And also check out his libertarian introduction to Bitcoin, which you can Google and read for yourself and see what you think. Okay,